Hello everybody, hope you're doing okay and welcome to Portugal, my last day here. Now, I haven't done a shoe review for a while. You might be thinking, well, the Vaporfly 3, the Rocket X2, the Wave Rebellion Pro. Well, actually, no, the Brooks Ghost 15. I actually got these before Christmas and I've sort of held off doing a review of them. So what do you normally associate B with? Well, there's obviously B for Brooks, isn't there? But there's also B for boring and B for brick, which I've kind of also used in my shoe reviews over the years. So kind of the appeal for me that I wanted to sort of see what the fuss was all about, because whenever you sort of do a Google of what's the best-selling shoe, you all see the Ghost up near the front of the list, and you're kind of thinking, well, you don't see that many sort of shoe reviews on it. And is that because it's just like people buy the Brooks Ghost 15 because they bought the 14, they bought the 13, they bought the 12, they basically don't know anything else? And is it the sort of shoe that when you go into a shop 10 years ago, you walk out with a Brooks and you still walk out with a Brooks when you come in 10 years later? So yeah, I mean, another thing about it is that it does come in 4 widths. So me being a narrow-footed runner, this one had quite a lot of appeal because it's one of the few shoes that actually comes in a narrow width. But as you can see here, it's not actually that narrow, even in the narrow. I would say it's sort of like equivalent to what most other shoes are in a sort of a medium. So if you've got a really wide foot, I think you'd be delighted with the 4E version. In terms of the weight and the drop and the sort of the stats like that, it's about 360 grams in my UK 13, which compares pretty well, to be fair, to the Pegasus 39, which is just a fraction lighter, averaging about 355. I think the Vomero 16 that I quite enjoyed was just slightly heavier at 370, and the Invincible 1 and 2 haven't actually got the 3, is about 380. But it's got a really big heel-to-toe drop. It's one of the highest shoes you can possibly imagine. I have 12 millimeters from the heel to the front. I think it's 35 mils in the back and 23 in the front, which initially, even though I'm sort of used to sort of 8 to 10 mil shoes in Nike and Saucony that I mainly wear, this did feel rather you were almost on a slope, but after a while you do get sort of used to it. I think the best thing I could say about the shoe is that it just sort of like gets the job done. I mean, initially I thought it was absolutely an awful shoe, but I come to sort of like it a bit, but only for like slow days. So when Matt, my coach, says go out and do a slow run, Tim, well, I think, well, actually this kind of helps because it's actually quite difficult to run fast in this shoe. Having said that, I did do a Strava segment the other day. Well, I just got the course record, but I think I might have cut it off a slightly little short, so don't tell the guy that I beat. Anyway, you need all the help you can get. So in terms of like the ride, well, it's kind of like a kind of firm ride by modern day standards, which kind of means it's sort of like something or nothing. You kind of think it's, well, it's not like the softness that you would get from the Invincible, or to a lesser extent the Nova Blast 3, which incidentally is 300 grams in my size. Although I have to say it doesn't feel quite as heavy as it does on foot, maybe because I'm only ever going slowly. But I think it's got quite a wide base, even though it's a narrow shoe. And at the back here, you've got quite a nice covering of a rubber, which I think some people get very excited about outsoles. I tend to think, well, the better the outsole, the heavier it is. And do you really need to worry about sort of taking a road shoe on masses of trails? I'm sat next to the water's edge here at the moment. In fact, if I wait here any longer, the tide's coming in and I might get flooded. So if this shoe review doesn't quite make it out, then that's probably why. But yeah, I mean, it's a DNA of Loft version 2 foam in this. I think I apologise if I've got it wrong. Because of the fact it's only 23 at the front, it does feel like you can feel your toes a bit, even when I'm sort of going at a fairly sort of slow pace. So I think, if anything, it sort of like helps if you rock back a bit going slowly. So I think as I go more slowly, I tend to sort of rock back on my heels a bit. And if I'm going faster, maybe more of a forefront. But I tend to toe off a lot. So I'm finding that you can sort of feel it through the ground a bit, which kind of gives it a sort of a nice sort of connected-ish sort of feel. But at the same time, it's just sort of, it's just boring. It's just like nothing much to it. And it's just like a workhorse shoe that don't expect to go out and run PBs in it. Yeah, you could race in it if you really wanted to, but there's so many options, of course, these days that this would be about the last shoe I would ever want to take out on a race. And being in the narrow version, it only comes in this boring blue colour, which again is another negative for Brooks. But yeah, I mean, I think I can sort of understand why this shoe is so popular, because it just gets the job done with 4 widths and it goes up to UK 14. It's one of the most sort of versatile shoes, because there's very few shoes these days when you put on they sort of fit everybody. But if you've got 4 widths, then surely everyone's going to be able to find a version that works for them. It's an engineered mesh at the front here and sort of fairly standard laces. Quite a padded tongue, to be fair, which I think actually helps with the lockdown, because initially when I put it on I thought, oh, it was a bit too wide even for the narrow, but I think over time I've got it sort of nicely locked down now, and it feels sort of like comfortable on foot. A lot of people, when you look at the reviews of Brooks shoes, they say, oh, it's a good walking shoe, good for walking my dog. I mean, usually that's a sort of an indictment of a shoe that you've worn it a few times and you've hated it and you've relegated it to a shoe to walk your dogs with. But I think, to be fair, I've done a few runs in this, and I've done a sort of fair amount of walking back to the ferry here in Portugal afterwards. And it is a nice shoe for walking in, and it's not sort of too squashy feeling. I think when I walked in the Invincible bit, you kind of get the feeling, yes, it's comfortable, but it's almost like too comfortable. You find that when you're sort of going slowly, you find want a bit more firmness under you. So yeah, having done about 60 miles now in it over about 4 months, I was really struggling to actually sort of come out with a review that's actually going to be helpful. But I think, well, let's not just slag off a shoe for the sake of it. But I think the problem these days, you get so excited by the Vaporflies, the Alpha Flies, the Street Flies, all these sort of like fast shoes, the Speeds, that when I go to a shoe like this, it's kind of like on a day like I'm perhaps tired, I just want to do an easy run, and it's just like a shoe for getting it done on that day and then moving on to the next one. And I think, yeah, it fits that purpose fine. Don't expect it to do too much else, because I don't think it does too much else. It's just a shoe for going nice and slowly and easily on, but it's quite comfortable, and yeah, gets the job done. And I'm sure you'll be able to find a colour and a width and a size to fit you. So I hope you find this interesting. Like and subscribe and all that, and see you on the next one. I do hope eventually to get the Vaporfly 3. They cancelled my order by Nike, which is the first time that's ever happened. Although it did actually happen with Asics, with the Meta Racer back in the day. So yeah, I was rather disappointed about that, but yeah, I've got plenty of other shoes to be getting on with. So I hope you found this interesting. Once again, like and subscribe on that, and see you next one then. Bye. So an example of how quickly the tide comes in, I was actually over there about 10 minutes ago before I started this shoe review to go find a nice spot to sit down, and now of course it's completely flooded in water, and we seem to have got some sort of little frog here which is burying itself deep in the sand. Anyway, it's about to get on the plane back to the UK, so I heard it's all wet, miserable and March weather, so yeah, be a shame. Hopefully we'll be here again soon when it's nice warm weather. It's about 20 degrees today, nicely warm. Just had a little run in the Brooks Ghost 15 up to here for about a mile and a bit, just to sort of put something on the board, as it were, but effective rest day today, because I did 70 miles last week, and I think that's more than enough. So yeah, I think Matt's got me down for a session on Wednesday, so see how that goes.